Hi there, it's John Foster RC here, and today we're going to build this new chassis. I've not built this particular chassis before. This is the M-06 chassis. It's a rear wheel drive with a rear mounted motor. So yeah, this was courtesy of the lovely CW01 Creations, Mr. Peter Smith. Thank you so much indeed. This was a lovely gift for my birthday back at the beginning of the year. So sorry I've taken this long to get around to it, but I wanted to cherish it. So yeah, this is going to be a lovely build. I say new build for me. Chassis is more of a road going chassis, so it'd be nice to be able to see this out on the main road out the front, so I can get some shots of that. And well, let's take a look. So first of all, we're going to have to decide on our chassis length, and chassis length for us is governed by our body. And if you look at your body instructions, it will tell you what length of chassis you need to build. So in our case, we want the L, which is the 239 millimeters. That's the wheelbase. So that means that we're going to follow this instruction whenever we see it. So we are straight away, we're going into a bag and we're going into building the differential. Wonderful. So let's do that. Okay, so for step one, we need some components from our component bag, and from our component bags we actually need these guys here, the 2.8 millimeter screws, these little tiny guys here. These are the BA7s. We need 3 of those. We need these 9mm washers, which are the BA10s, which are these little guys here. We're going to need our large bevel gears, 2 of those, which are these guys here. We're going to need our small bevel gears, which are these guys here. We're going to need our star shaft, which is this guy here. We're also going to need our differential spur gear, which is this big guy here. And we're also going to need our differential spur gear cover, which is this guy here. Okay, right, so we're going to need to put all these together with some grease and put them inside of this guy here. Okay, so I'll show you how to do that. Okay, so let's take our little star shaft, it's this guy here, and then let's put some grease on here so it's nicely greased. Excuse me, but there's a bit of a hair there, don't want that. Better. There we go. And now we need to also make sure that our washers have plenty of grease on them too. Into the bottom. So I'm popping that into the bottom. So now we need to pop our large gear. Oh, a bit too much. Lovely. Something satisfying about splatting some grease in there. Okay, so now we got our washer in there, and we've also got our large bevel gear in there. Now we turn our attention back to the star shaft and these little small bevel gears. So the little small bevel gears, we need to pop these onto the star shaft. And then what you need to do is, when you've got some grease on there, just pop it onto the, so that it collects onto the camera here, here and here. And once it's in like that, you can then pop some more grease on top of that and make sure that there's enough grease on those gears. Okay. There's enough in there, so that'll do. And now we're technically doing the opposite way around now. Is now that we've got that inside, we need to pop our large bevel gear, but this time we need to pop our large bevel gear face down. So again, let's pop some more grease on there. And then pop it, oh, wrong way around, face down this time. And then on the other side, we need to make sure there's some grease here, because that needs to have the little washer. Like that. And once you've got that in, take the gear, take the cover, pop the cover, so that these little twangs, if you like, these little locating keys, they locate in the holes. You'll see there's some holes in there. I don't know if that picks it up on camera, but we'll soon find out. So you're going to make sure that the holes line up with the holes. So these keys are going to go down where the shafts went down. There we go. Done. There we are. And then what we need to do is screw this closed using the Tamiya small screwdriver. That's it, done. And there you have step one completed. Nice. Right, well, we're on now step two. And step two, we need some parts. We need some screws, which are these screws here, which is BA1, which is a 3x25mm machine screw. We need a BA3, which is a 3x8mm machine screw. We need a self-tapping screw, which is 3x12mm. That's this one here. We also need some plastic parts, so we need the F6s, which are these two guys here. We need the D6, which is this one. We need a D7, which is this one, and a D5, which is this one. We need the differential spur gear that we made in the previous step. And first of the hop-ups here, so Peter of CW01 Creations has kindly given me ball bearings. So out with these horrible plasticky things. We don't need those. We're going to have nice ball bearings, and these are the rubber sealed ones as well, so they're lovely ones. So thank you, Peter, for the upgrade too. So we need to build this step and put it together, and not forgetting putting some nice grease on here as well. Right, show you how it's done. So the first step we need to do, you need to take our F6 parts, which is these guys here, and we need to just make sure that we pop the ball bearing in. So that's a case of pushing that in to the ball bearing housing, right? So that's one. And again, here we go, that's two. You just give them a push in, so they're square. There you go. Make sure they're all the way home, which they are. There you go. So that's part of that done. Okay, so the next bit, we need to take our D6 part, and we know this is the D6 part because this bit is recessed here. Okay, check with the drawing again. Okay, then we take the bearing holder that we just did and put that into place there. Okay, making sure it's the right way around, so you make sure that the bearing is inwards. Okay, so then we take our D7 part, which is our mating part. We know this because this bit's got a shroud on there, look, and which you can see will go in that one. So we now do the same thing. Take that in there and place that in. Okay, make sure it's square and it is in there. There we are, which it is. Okay, so that's that step again. So what we've done in preparation for the next part of step 2, and that's putting the differential spur gear into the casings. We've put it here. You can probably see here. I've laid some grease. So the bit that was recessed on here, that's this recessed bit here. I've actually laid some grease in there. So what happens is when we bring the two surfaces together, this will then go into here, and that will act as a seal and stop any dust from getting in to your gearbox area. Okay, so that's what that is now. So we now need to grease up the differential spur gear and put it into place, screw the two together. Okay, so we've greased that up now, and you can see I've sat that in, just making sure that the screw heads are this way round. I don't think it makes a difference, but just in case. Then we get the two halves of the gearbox case, marry them together, and that should now fit nicely. And we got a bit of squidgy of greases, but that's okay. We can wipe that off, take most of the excess off. You've got to get your fingers a little bit greasy, but hey, it doesn't matter. So there we are. So that's now in, and what we now need to do is take the D5 part, and we need to locate this according to the drawing. So I'll locate like that, because we've got these holes here, here and here. There we are. So that will just locate like that. And I'm wondering if we should put a little bit of grease in there too. I think we should. Why not? There we are. So I will take that part and slot that into place, and then we'll wipe it off afterwards. Now we need to screws. So we've got our gearbox part. Take our big screw, which goes in this one here. Okay, we then take our other machine screw, which will go on the bottom one down here, and we take our self-tapping one like that, just spotting there, so pop that in. Tight, and then we pop these back in like so. Just nip them up so they're tight. Don't have to go too mad. Yeah, done. Step 2 done. Okay, so we're now on step 3, and step 3 we need some more parts. We're going to need a lot more D parts this time round. So over here you will see the D parts that I'm talking about. So this is D9, this is D4, this one here is D2, this one's D12, this one here, oh, is just about there, that's D11, this one here is D1, And we're also going to need some screws. So we're going to need some BA2s, two of those, which are these two guys here, 3x10mm machine screws. BA3, a 3x8mm machine screw. And these big boys, 4 of the BA4s, which are 3x15mm self-tapping screws. And it's really a case of putting this together on our existing gearbox that we made in steps 1 and 2. So it's quite a straightforward step, just putting and screwing these in together. And a little tip here that Tamiya put in there, when you're putting in the self-tapping screws, if you find them a bit difficult, just put a little bit of grease on the tip and that'll help it worm its way into the plastics on here. All right, show you how it's done, show you how it's put together. Okay, so as before, do this in stages. So we're going to take our existing gearbox, we're going to take our D2 part, going to locate that on here, and we need to get it the right way round, of course. So see the square in the middle? Okay, you can see these like this, these little tangs at the side. That's going to go and locate in here, and we've got to locate this screw. Okay, so it's going to go in there like that. Okay, so we're going to take our longer screws, our BA4s, and we're going to need to screw this through this side and get this all the way through. And also we need to make sure that the D12 part sits underneath this. So this is this little guy here. And it shows you in the diagram how you need to get this little bit to sit correctly. So you get that to sit like that. There you are. All right, so a little bit of a dexterity. Let's get that in. There we are. Okay, so now we've got that in. We also now need to do the same with this bottom one and D11. So we need to drop this into the right place. And again, you can see on here, there's this shoulder, this little locating key, and it locates in the bottom there. So make sure you locate that in, which it is. Okay. And we then do the same again with the bottom. And that locates at this point here. Okay, so that's that bit on. Now what we need to do also is we need to take the other side of the D4 and pop that onto the other side here, and they meet up as well, so they all line up correctly. There we go. And again, use some of those longer 15mm screws where we've just been. we are. And now that we've got this in place, we've got this little capped area. This is like a little cover, so we need to get this in the right way. And I believe it goes, looking at the drawing, that way around. We are. So these, we use the 3x10s. So these little guys here. There we go. That one and that one. And that is effectively step 3 completed. Okay. Alrighty, so we're carrying on. We're now on step 4. And step 4, we need some more parts. So we need our gearbox assembly that we've been building. We also need the spur gear, which is this guy. We also need the counter gear, which is this guy. We need a D8, which is this guy. And we also need some more parts from the bag. So we need BA2s, we need 2 of those. They're the 3x10mm machine screws. We need one of the 3x8mm machine screws. So that's BA2s are the 10mm long ones, and the BA3 is the 8mm long one. We need, instead of the plastic bearings and metal bushes, we need our bearings, our 1150 bearings, 2 of those, replacing BA11 and replacing BA12. And replacing the metal bearings that would be BA13, we're using our 850 bearings here. Okay, and again, thank you, Peter. That's a really nice touch with these lovely bearings that you bought me. We also need a 5x40mm shaft, which is this one, and a 5x21mm shaft, so that's BA15 and BA16. And we need to just put them into the gearbox like this. Show you how it's done. So the first part of step 4, we need to take our spur gear and counter gear, and we need to put in our bearings. So on one side of the spur gear, we've got the 1150 bearing, which goes in place. That's very straightforward. And then on the other side, we need the slightly smaller bearing, which is the 850 bearing, and we need to pop that into there as well. And it talks about using your box wrench to push it so it's home straight. So the idea is just to make sure it sits nice and square like that. Okay, done. Okay, so that's that bearing into that housing, and we need to do the same again on this one. Bearing goes in on one side, and again on the other side goes like that. Okay, so they literally sit in there like that. Okay, no, that one's come back out. We'll put it back in. There we are. Done. Okay, that's that part. Now we need to put the shafts and put them into our gearbox assembly. Okay, so let's take our shafts, and on our this is our counter gear. This is the longer of the shafts, the 5x40mm that goes through. Okay, and then on our shorter one, which is our spur gear, the shorter one goes through. Okay, like that. Okay, and then we need to put these into the gearbox. So make sure you get the gearbox orientation correctly. Note this bit here sticking up. This bit is at the front, so we need to put the counter gear in, and that goes all the way through. And in the bottom of there's actually a recess for this shaft. So I'm just going to slide that through, but I need to put some grease on here just so it's got enough grease. Okay, so be back in a moment once I've greased these through and put the bearings back in because they keep falling out. Okay, so there's the counter one that's been greased and ready. Gonna get greasy fingers here a little bit, I'm afraid. So pop that in just feel for that little recess. Yeah. And then we've got to do the same again on this gear as well. Put a bit of grease on here, and here we are, nicely greased up, look. So again, find that little recess hole and the gear should line up. There we go. Okay, so that's in there and it's well greased. And now we've got to put the cover over it. Okay, so now what I've done here is the cover. There's a little ridge groove in here, and I've painted on with my paintbrush a little bit of grease. Again, I'm acting like a seal. It's a little tip that I've got from the YouTube guys, just to get that nice and sealed up. And there's many guys out there that do that, but two that come to mind straight away, so Pete Wiley RC and Mark Bryant, they tend to do this sealing up the gearbox using this grease. So thank you very much indeed for that great tip. Also Peter Smith, CW01s, he does the same thing, seals up the gearbox. So let's pop that on there now. So it will probably squidge out a little bit of grease, but we can wipe that on afterwards. We now know the surface between there and there is now sealed. All right, so now we're going to take our screws. We've got a short one, which is the 8mm one, which is this guy. That goes in here at the top. All right, and then the other two goes over here. Okay, and that's the 10mm one as well. You'll feel it when it stops. It stops there, see? Yeah, and a quarter turn. And then all you need to do, we just need to clean up that bit of grease so it's clean. So what I've done here is just use I get a bit of kitchen towel, I cut it into 4, and they act as good ways of just getting in there. And you're just making sure that you clean off any excess grease, which we have done here, look. There we go. So there's no excess grease on there. There we are. But we now know that that's sealed, so that there's no dust and stuff can get through and into your gearbox. Great tip. There we are. So that is now step 4 completed. Right, we can move on to step 5. Okay, so we're now on step 5. And step 5, we need all of these parts. The A11 part, which is the rear sort of part of the chassis. We've got these are the C19 parts, so we need 2 lots of those because we need to do a left and a right. We've also got the C11 parts, again 2 of those, we need to do a left and a right. And we also need this part, which is the E6 part, 1 of those. And we also need some more parts from our A-bag, our BA14s, which are these 2 long screw pins. They are 46mm long and they're 3mm diameter. And we also need 5 of these BA6s. They are 3x10mm self-tapping screws. So just line them up with a drawing. If you don't know how to build the Tamiyas, always refer these to the drawing and you'll see that these are true to scale. Okay, right, let's go and build this step. So effectively, let's do the first part. Let's take our this is our C11 part and our C19 part, put the 2 together, and it gets you to look for this marking on top, which is this one here. Look, just, I don't know, pick it out. Let's get a bit closer, turn it around, you can just see there. So it just wants you to look at that and get that the right way. Okay, so we'll just look for that now, and then we'll pop that into place. Okay, like that. And then we do the same again on the other one. And you see, we'll do the same again on this one. This time round like this way around. So we're now going over here. Make sure we get this little lug there, right way around, like so. There we are. And then we need to put the BA6s in through here. So I'm just going to screw those in. I'm not going to show you how to screw those in. We all know how to use a screwdriver. And there you go. So they're the pieces that you make. Okay. And making sure that you've got the little raised pieces there. And then on here, this one and this one. So they're the two pieces that will go either side of your chassis. And then you attach them to the chassis by introducing them to the chassis. So on here, I'll show you one side. Use one of the long screw pins in from here, and you notice, keep it dry because you don't want any grease in there. Okay, so that goes in, and you screw that in. So nice easy step. I'll show you again on the other side, like that, in there, jiggle, so it goes through the hole. Can't beat a bit of arc, right? Jiggle, and there you go. Nip that up. Okay, so you now have two there, and then you take your E6 piece and put that like that over the drawing. So it can only go one way. And this has got the center piece, the screw, the last remaining BA6 screw down in the middle. Okay, done. And that is how you put that on, and that's how you do step 5. Okay, so we'll now see you on the next step. Okay.